Hello, dear friends. Here we are. Welcome to the Spirit Society of Virginia and Kardec Radio here in our Fridays uplifting talks, studies, conversations, so we can calibrate ourselves with the divine harmony. And as such, of course, we can progress better and faster for sure. I see friends coming in. Thank you for joining us. Today we have a most special topic on mental fixation. But before we begin, remember, this is a therapeutic meeting. Every time we are talking about sublime topics, uplifting conversations, we're connecting with the higher forces of the earth. Make sure you have your bottle of water or your glass of water or your jar of water nearby because it's a complete session. Your protecting spirits are taking advantage of your time to operate on you, your loved ones, on your house, the connections that you have in both realms. So let us take this opportunity to prepare ourselves. Ideally, don't go here and there surfing and thinking and cooking and cleaning. But if you have to do it, you have to do it. But if you can stop, stop. Tell your body, relax. Let's listen. Let's talk. Feel free to make comments. Feel free to ask questions. And we can interact with you too, okay? We're going to ask our dear Paloma to begin it with a message. Remember, this inspirational message is where we start marching towards. It's like entering in the Wi-Fi of the spirit mentors so we can start picking up on the procedures, the medication they are to deliver to us. Thank you, Paloma.
Hello, everyone. We're going to start reading a message from the book, The Way, the Truth, and the Life, psychographed by Chico Xavier by the Spirit Emmanuel. Transitory Things, Chapter 72. They will perish, but you shall remain, and all of them will wear out like a garment. Paul. Ecclesiastes tells us about human vanities and affliction amid the maelstrom of unbridled earthly ambitions. Ever since the earliest times of the human family, there have been individuals who were involved in the false values of the world. However, it would take only a few minutes of serious thought about how transitory everything is in the realm of forms to grasp the sovereignty of the spirit. Just look at the ostentation housed in museums and the ruins of dead civilizations. What was the purpose of building such monuments and arches of triumph? Everything has functioned as the clothing of thought. Ideas have evolved and the spirit has become enriched, whereas its old garments are long gone. The callous hands that built glossy columns learned the secrets of life through work. Yet, how much bitterness was experienced by the insane persons who fought to possess those columns, even to the point of death? Therefore, take advantage of every chance to serve. Look at it as a sacred opportunity on your divine pathway to God. Scarcity is invaluable because it brings discipline. Abundance is precious because it multiplies the forms of the good. Even so, both will perish someday. In the corporeal realm, glory and misery are merely temporary situations. They both pass away. Only Jesus and the divine law remain with us as doorways to life and redemption.
Thank you, Paloma. Now we're going to ask everyone to kindly join us in a prayer. Let us remember that prayer is therapy too. as we've studied yesterday evening on our immortal messages, through the guidance of the teachings of Dr. Diaz da Cruz, he talks about the therapeutics of prayer. And prayer can be truly therapeutic, and he says why. Because when we raise our thoughts, we connect with the higher planes, and they have sublime thinking, he says, and they emit to us new images that are beautiful and good, and those restore ourselves. So, this is just a little bit about the mechanisms of prayer. So, now join us in this moment of prayer. I'm going to put some music here so we can together pray. Okay. Let us close our eyes. Let us close our eyes and feel the invitation to the good. We thank you, God, for the rain, for the storm that cleanses the atmosphere. And we feel more deeply prepared to cleanse our hearts and our minds of beliefs that are no longer needed, of sorrows, anguishes, any and every feeling and thought that no longer is needed in our minds. We feel the envelopment of your renewing winds, and we can already see ourselves freer from limiting thinking, from feelings that limit us to absorb the greatness of your abundant love. We want to learn the new. We want to express our love for you, being diligent in this hour that you grant us. May your messengers find in our minds, in our homes, open doors for the operations of the good, transforming ourselves to what you've created us for. And through effort and repetition, we shall multiply the resources you have come to shower us with. Feeling the inspiration and the guidance. We are deeply grateful for the permission to begin this session of deep therapy for our souls, for the spirits that accompany us, and so be it. All right. So for those who are watching us, We also have connected the website of the Spirit Side of Virginia to this program. So if by any chance you can't get us through Facebook, YouTube, go straight to the ssvirginia.org website and you'll be able to be connected with us there as well, okay? Today, we're going to be invited to revisit a topic or to study a topic we haven't been able to study very deeply, which is about mental fixation. Dr. Dias da Cruz, who was a Brazilian doctor in the 19th century to the 20th century, he was a homeopathic doctor in Brazil, friends with Dr. Bezerra de Menezes. And if you go to Brazil, you always find this name in some streets, Dias da Cruz. And like, who is he? He is Dr. Dias da Cruz. He became a spiritist, and he even spent a term as the Brazilian president of the Brazilian Spiritist Federation when it was in Rio de Janeiro. Soon after him, Dr. Bezerra de Menezes comes and continues the legacy. Dr. Dias da Cruz, in the spiritual realm, came to know much more about obsession. And through Chico Xavier, he wrote several messages and he spoke several messages that are now immortalized in books, such as the one we're studying at 11 p.m. in the program Immortal Messages. There's one specific message in which he talks about mental fixation. Do you think you have mental fixations? What is it, Vanessa? It's that single idea. It's like when you think, oh, there isn't a day when I can't think of that person or that thing or even vices. There isn't a day in which I can't drink. I can't have sex with somebody, doesn't matter whom, or I can't see pornography. And I'm talking about daily habits of many millions, billions of people, or eating a lot, and then many thoughts, especially when he talks about negative thinking and feeling. Those are mental fixations. So before we talk about why does this happen and the way out of it, because if we stay stuck in there, we will be entrapped in obsessions. We are going to talk about where it all begins. So we're going to ask André Luiz, in several books, but mostly in the book Mechanisms of Mediumship, he talks about mental fixation based on the physiology of our thoughts. The physiology of our thoughts. You and I think and feel, and it has a whole dynamic. So when we talk about physiology, we're talking about what? The study of the interactions of these elements of thought with the environment, okay? Just like the physical body, when we talk about our physiology, the physical body as well. So I'm just double checking here to make sure that you are able to see the whole slide. So it's important to understand, as he says, in the book in Portuguese, Mecanismos da Mediunidade. In English, it's translated as Mechanics of Mediumship. Chapter 4, André Luiz discloses to us something fascinating, that your thought, my thought, is within God's thought, the Creator's thought. Think about it. And you're like, what? Can you repeat it? Yes. Your thought and my thought are within God's thought. What does that mean? It means that if we don't use our thoughts within this alignment, we're going to suffer. You see, that's how we're co-creating. because we don't think just like that. We're granted by God the thinking capacity, and just like somebody who grants us access to clay, and then we work on it, but we didn't create the clay. So that means that thought is matter. Yes. André Luiz explains to us that it's so tangible that it forms waves, and he says there are even particles. He explains to us that our thoughts contain, he names them corpuscles, meaning particles. He says they have positive and negative charges. Yes. And just as an analogy to atoms, he talks about this mental formations based on these subatomic charges, okay? So our aura is composed of the currents of thoughts that are common, habitual to us. Mamma mia, this is huge for us. What are the implications of this? This is so, 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 so important. It's going to change our lives forever, because whatever you think and feel, you are showering yourself with it first. So the question is, can you choose what you feel? Yes. Maybe not in a first pass, because emotions are externalizations of our own vibrations and our interactions with the environment and ourselves. But in a second moment, you can say, okay, I'm feeling sad. What do I want to do with it? Maybe just look at it and say, okay, sadness, I know you're there. Okay, show me, what's this about? And then we allow it to show us what it is. But we say, we're going to choose to change it, because I appreciate you coming and telling me that this is happening. And I agree with you. It's sad, but it's not going to do any good if we stay stuck in that sadness. Because life is beautiful. Because no matter what, and I'll give an example. There was a time when Peter, the disciple, the apostle Peter, after Jesus' passing, many decades later, he kept working faithfully like his brother, faithfully working in the harvest of the Christ, helping people. But one day, Peter saw his brother being arrested unfairly, brutally murdered in front of him. And Peter went home feeling distraught, feeling terrible, and feeling he wanted to avenge the death of his brother. But he prayed. Instead of taking action and reacting, he prayed to Jesus and said, I need help. This is not right. I need help. I need your help. And Jesus came to him. He talked to Jesus, and Jesus said, look, these people, they will live. And he said, I know. But what is going to happen with this person who did this? And that person, and he gave us the names of the people who cruelly murdered his brother. And Jesus said, for this person, he will live. For that person, he will live. And Humberto de Campos through Chico Xavier explains to us that Jesus meant that they will reincarnate, and they will have to face the deeds of their doing. So Peter then understood inside of his heart that it was not worthwhile cultivating that vengeance, that feeling of vengeance. He needed to feel compassion because the people who are now doing that, they will reincarnate and they will have to face the consequences of their actions, whether on Earth or in another planet, whether in the same country or some other country. But it's not worthwhile cultivating it, that spirit of vengeance, that spirit of sadness, of anger. We need to take action, of course, towards those who are in need of being protected, but we can't cultivate anger, hatred, because those are not productive feelings. They are not going to generate any good, not any good whatsoever. So here we have the reasons why. Because when we feel this, we are creating currents of thoughts that are going to be enveloping us, you and I. So when I feel whatever I feel about somebody else or even ourselves, it's here on us all the time. And he says more. He says these forces of thought are in constant synchronous movements or state of agitation by the impulses of our will. And they establish for each person their own mental wave. Meaning that you and I will cultivate those thoughts and feelings. They are going to generate currents, movements, synchronous movements that will respond to our will. And they will create a particular mental wave. You know, mental wave is our IP address. If you talk about computer, our mental wave, like a computer, is our IP address. People can find you. They can find us. So then suddenly you're like, how come I ended up meeting this person? How come I ended up getting to know of that person? How come I ended up working here or there? Your IP address. Your IP address made the connections. Once we have that IP address, which is our particular mental wave, we are going to create this mental matter. And André Luiz says, this mental matter is so tangible, though subtle, that it becomes moldable by our will. So you and I have the power, according to our will and our consciousness, to operate and mold what we want to keep in our mental body. So a quick exercise for you and I. If you take a pencil or a pen and a blank piece of paper, write down or draw what you think is in your mental matter, in your mental body. What kinds of images? What are they? And evaluate. Because most people say, but Vanessa, I pray a lot. And yet, but you're still in the back burner of your mind. There are many things you haven't resolved. That's why psychotherapy is so important with competent psychotherapists, of course. Because then you have the opportunity of changing the way, editing the way we're seeing that scenario. I can edit my mental body. And you can start editing now. You can choose who you want to be. You tell your story. If there's one thing we want to tell everybody is this: you have the power to tell your story, nobody else. If someone says, I know who you are, Vanessa, I don't think you do. You know. No, but you are. You say, I will tell you who I am. And then you will keep in your mental body who you are. We are co-creators. We're sculpting ourselves in the name of God. That's something people don't talk about, because when we talk about inner reform, inner transformation, that's what it means. Self-sculpting. You are your own Michelangelo. You are your own Michelangelo, and you are the very sculpture. Because you're going to look and say, this is who I am. And people are going to look, no, I don't think you are. Thank you. But this is who I am. And you're going to keep sculpting until one day people look like, oh my gosh, you're right. You are whatever you think you are, right? You are. Yeah, I told you. I was working on it. But we can choose. That's the power of our will. We can choose what we think. We can choose what we feel. We can choose who we want to be. And we're talking about an immortal construction. Immortal construction. But who tells us this? Few people tell us, if any. Because you hear people saying something and say, oh yeah, I'm an immigrant. Or I belong to this race or that race. No. Whatever they think, who are you? You choose who you want to be. And you make sure that you work on it in such a way that people will perceive it. You're not going to enforce, but you're going to be who you are. And historically, we have seen, since ancient times, people who have worked in that way. Who are they? The masters of all times. And of course, the master of all masters, Jesus Christ. People looked at Jesus and said, hey, you, Nazarene. Hey, you, Galilean. Hey, you, pilgrim. Hey, which is almost like nowadays, like, hey, you, immigrant, right? Because he was going here and there. And who was he? He said, I'm the Son of God. And some were like, ha, 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 ha. Really? He said, yes, I am the Son of God. I came here to implement the kingdom of God. And in the book Good News that we're sending on Sundays, and if you want to join in, you can join in. Just go to our website, ssvirginia.org, to find out how. You will see that in the book Good News, we have our chapter 3, actually, talking about that encounter, which is actually this Sunday. We're going to discuss about that. That encounter when one doctor of the law, one Pharisee comes and have that feeling of superiority before Jesus. And see how he responds. He doesn't react, but he responds. He chose, not only at that moment, but he chose ever since to be who he wanted to be, the Son of God. But who are you? You are not from this country or that country simply, from this race or that race, from this socioeconomic status or that. You are a child of God too. You can say, I am a child of God. But you were born in, no, but it doesn't matter. This life I was born there, but who said in another life I wasn't born somewhere else? It doesn't matter. It matters this life. No, for me, it doesn't matter. It doesn't limit me. Does it limit you? So we can unlimit ourselves. This way of thinking that Spiritism brings to us is truly liberating. It's freeing because it brings to us the awareness that we have a powerful will to co-create with God our own selves, meaning we are the Michelangelo and we are the very sculpture of Michelangelo. So here's our homework. Who do you want to be? Who are you? What is in your mental body? Do you want to change anything? And how do you want to change it? Think about it, because we can change it as we speak. And then we're going to sing messages of the immortal messages like this message, Thought by Lorenzo Prado, and others that we have studied. I'm just giving you references so you can watch other programs as well to grasp more information regarding the power of our thoughts. It's so powerful that we create these IP addresses, our mental waves, that will vitalize all the centers of our soul. So however I think and I feel will create a particular vibratory imprint that will be particular to you or particular to me. And what happens next? I will make connections, associations, interactions at each thought and each feeling. You don't need 2 thoughts or 3 or 4 to make a Wi-Fi connection with other minds. It takes 1 thought, 1 feeling. And if we don't watch out, we'll be stuck in that mental current for a while. So let's talk about these mental interactions here. When we read a page, says Andrea Lewis, we're connecting. When we read a page. Nowadays, we are on social media all the time. So each and every news that we read, we're making connections. When we consult a book or a website or an Instagram account or a post of whatever nature on Twitter, etc., we are making connections, mental interactions at a given conversation, even if it is a typed in conversation, written conversation, we are making connections right there. Any focus of our attention on a particular subject connect us with that person, to the point that Leon Denis, in the book After Death, tells us in a chapter named Love, that he says, and you, dear reader, may you receive my embrace when you read this, because I know one day we're destined to meet each other. He already knew that by the moment we're picking up his book, we're interacting with him, and we are. Several spirits talk about it, several. And this is so certain, it's telepathic. And this is something for us to mark it down, because we don't know enough the power of those interactions. He says, all these actions put us in spontaneous correlation with the incarnate or discarnate intelligences with which they harmonize through the mental loads we have accumulated and we transmit in form of pictures or serious sparks. So hold on to that thought over there. Think about a beautiful book, like you're reading the book Thought and Life, Paul and Stephen, The Gospel According to Spiritism, The Way, the Truth, and the Life. There's so many beautiful books, thank God, accessible to us. Because some people think we'll access to them. They keep in the shelves, on the shelves, and they think, one day I'm going to read. And then you discarnate and you find out that in the lower zones, there are no libraries, no bookstores. And we'll spend years or decades or centuries away from the treasures. So we better read, memorize, because if we one day don't have at hand, at least we have in our hearts. These books, we connect to the author, to the minds of the author, and everybody else who is connected to that focus group. This is about focus groups, mentally speaking. Now, think about when you're spending the days reading the news and you're connecting, and that fear, like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? And I'm afraid. Turn it off. Say a prayer. Because there are many spirits banking on it. Many discarnate spirits who have nothing else to do but to bother people's lives and make them feel afraid, desperate. And if you stay there, or angry, rebellious, creating true revolutions unnecessarily. Yes, we have to protest, to raise awareness with peace and wisdom, creating changes. It's not enough to say we need to change. We need to make changes happen by giving courses, by asking schools to implement new awareness on certain issues, by stopping at work to talk about how we can make sure we can change our ways regarding XYZ issues, etc. So being proactive in our daily lives, including our families. So André Luiz says the power of these mental interactions, to the point that he says, at each moment we're going to connect, and I'm going to go back here. Okay, two types of connections. There are only two Wi-Fis, mentally speaking. There are no 10,000. Thank God, because it would be so complicated. So there are only two. The one of constructive contents and the destructive ones. And there is no neutral position. So let's see the constructive ones. André Luiz says, the more ennobled the conscience, the richer will be the imagination and the mental power emerging from the soul. What is it? Ennobled, meaning sublime thoughts. What are sublime thoughts? Let us talk a little bit about this before we talk about mental fixation, shall we, friends? Let's talk about this for a bit. I think I'm going to call Luciana and Paloma so we can talk a little bit about it, okay? Yes, so there is no libraries in the lower zones, at least not for good books, okay? Sorry for breaking the bad news. I'm sorry, so you know it, right, Paloma and Luciana? No, in the lower zones, there are no reports of good bookstores or good libraries. No, there are none. And we'll be in trouble. So we better read these books today and memorize them just in case.
Yes.
But Paloma and Luciana, let's talk about this ennobled thinking, because even yesterday at Cardiac Radio, we had a friend who was asking a very interesting question about, is it enough to think good thoughts? But the question is, what are good thoughts? Because for some people, good thoughts would be something so selfish. So let's discuss a little bit about what are good thoughts.
So that's a great question. I'm trying to imagine what are we know that the feeling of helping others makes us feel good, right? Even just thinking you're gonna go help someone, it makes you feel good. Like we know we're gonna have our food drive tomorrow. We are happy and we're feeling good, and I'm sure that is a thought that connects us with higher vibrations. Um, I'm thinking of something that maybe is not that bad of a thought, but we might be thinking like, "Oh, I wish I had an ice cream."
Yeah.
What connections we make there? I don't know if anything that would be very positive. There is not a harmful, like a bad thought, but it's not a great thought either, right?
Yeah.
Um, so thinking of the good prayers, the current of the fervorous prayers to others, to whatever, it doesn't, anything, whatever is happening in the world, to somebody you know, to a loved one. Prayers are great current of thoughts, positive, as long as you're praying for something good. We have heard stories of people asking for prayers, but their thought process is not the positive one. They're wishing, for something else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How about you, Lou?
it's very, very interesting because, like, when we think about something good, like Vanessa was saying before, we are always thinking about something good for myself.
Yeah.
But in noble thoughts,
Yeah.
we'll be thinking something good for me, but it's also good for the others. We always need to remember that good things is good for everyone, and sometimes that thing is not good for myself because it's going against what I think is good, but we always need to reflect for the greater good, right? So when we are connecting, we're trying to have noble thoughts, do something that is good. We need to see how many people can I reach by doing this good. So from that, you can kind of level yourself and see if I'm doing something good or not. It depends how like this good will spread. It's like the domino effect. How many people more can I help doing this good? Because if I'm doing just good for me, everything is much simple, right? So I'll be thinking about getting the ice cream, about getting a house, about getting a new shoes or something. But I need to think about like the greater good, thinking bigger than just myself. That's what I think when we're
You're
talking about
right.
this.
Yeah.
I think you guys are safe, Paloma.
No,
What
and
is-
I was, as Lou was saying, I was thinking more that it's the thoughts that takes us to immortality, right? To eternity. Like
Yeah.
the thought process that we have, and I'm sure it's for a lot of us all the time, it's very material. I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to go to the store, I need to go to, grocery shopping, I have work. Those are all in our heads all day long. But are those thoughts are the ones that were going to carry us as progressing spirits? I don't think so. So thinking of eternity that's coming, what's coming ahead of us, right? Like visualizing ourselves as pure spirits, or in a happy planet. Like you feel it just by thinking about it, that wow, I can now visualize it, and you might reach a little bit higher vibrations because of that thought process. It's another idea that came to mind.
You're right. You're right. I think that's the thoughts. Like when we are thinking about the greater good, when we are thinking ahead, ourselves advancing, and not stuck here, not stuck at this moment. Like, oh my gosh, like Peter. Oh my gosh, I want to avenge the death of my brother. But avenging is not going to do any good to you. And Jesus says, look, in the long run of life, these people that killed your brother, they're going to reincarnate. And they're going to bring it to themselves. They will live. But how about you? What do you want for yourself? Is it worthwhile cultivating these thoughts? Is this the pathway for transformation? By repeating the mistake of other people, does it make us any better? So in that ennobling attitude, we're polishing ourselves and we're entering this constructive mental currents when we're thinking of the greater good. And when we're talking about it, it reminds me of the definition of altruism. Scientifically, it says that it's when we prioritize the good of others in detriment to ourselves. So we will risk our own comfort to benefit others. And this is really super ennobling. Of all things, it's top, number one, right? When we say, okay, I could rest more, but, if I rest more, I won't be able to do this that will benefit XYZ people, like a mother, for example. Oh my gosh, the sleepless nights, right? And then you're like, okay, I could, and somebody else could feed this baby. But why did God give this baby to me?
Right.
And not to the neighbor? Because I'm supposed to do this. And okay, I won't sleep now, but I'll find a way to sleep later. Like Stephen, when he is taking care of Sergius Paulus, who is sick with a contagious disease. And he's not thinking of himself, oh my gosh, I'm going to catch this. Or, oh my gosh, I'm not even sleeping, I'm enslaved, I'm going to kill this guy. No, he's like, he devotes himself without thinking of any reward. And through that pathway, he gets sick. But it's the green card for him to get out of that boat, the ship, and go to the next phase of his life. And thanks to Stephen, we got Paul. And we got to know the Christ, literally. But he forgot of himself. He forgot completely about himself. I think Maria Inês is here saying, seek the good, visualize the good, feel the good. Exactly. Good to see you here, Maria Inês. A big hug to Robert, too. Big hug. Okay. So, friends, let me open now the discussion. I will show the definition of the opposite, the destructive mental currents. And that's where we're going to spend some time and bring you two back so we can discuss a little more, okay?
Okay.
So let us go there and get to this one. Now, this is the one that we need to understand that if we don't get into these constructive mental currents, where are we going to be connecting to the destructive ones? What are they about? And these are Andre Louis' words. Don't mind his wording because he just means well to illuminate us. So let's accept his wording. When the soul externalizes maladaptive and destructive mental waves, it attracts forces of equivalent content, often falling into obsessive blindness. Oh my gosh. But here there are keywords. Maladaptive first. What does it mean? Let's go back. We need to go back. Go back. Here. Your aura. The corpuscles. What we're thinking, creating images. Giving the whole bathing, vitalizing us in those thoughts and feelings. If those thoughts and feelings are not adapted to the Creator's thoughts, that's what he means by saying maladaptive. It's just like Darwin said, We're adapting ourselves to survive. But if this is not adapting to the harmony of the Creator's thought, we are immediately connecting to those who are just alike the ones who are, and I'll go back here to show to you what he says. When we start forming mental waves that will vitalize the centers of our souls, our health, our wellness, and make connections that are not healthy. They are unhealthy mental currents, destructive, attracting forces that are just alike, creating obsessions. And he says it's so blinding that we don't realize it. It's when people are good friends in gossip. They have their coffee break every day to chit-chat about what for, nobody knows. Oh, did you see? 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 And then we think there is no consequence. Go to the Spiritist magazine by Kardec. And he says, 2 women at his time were living, they were sisters, in the same house. And then spirit phenomena, rappings, noises, pins were flying, crazy. And they were scared. They got to know of the group, Kardec's group, and said, oh, please help us. And then Kardec wanted to help, evoked the spirits with the permission of higher spirits, saying, what's going on there? And the spirits came saying, you know, we're there to teach them a lesson because they keep gossiping about people every day. They need to know that they can't do this. They're destroying people's lives, people's reputation. And there are consequences. So you see, they thought they were just talking. But at the end of the day, they were using the clay of God, the Creator's thought, for useless things, which means negative things, destructive things. They were connecting with spirits that didn't like it either. Some like it. Some spirits like gossip, and that's why it's so common, because they mingle. They also want to create discord. Yeah, that's true. And André Louis says, and usually the soul falls in the traps of undesirable door of remorse after becoming an interpreter of unspeakable crimes. It's when you just go with the flow. It's what we call in psychology emotional contagion. Why did you do it? Because he did it. But why did you do it? Because he did it. She did it. They did it. Everybody does it. But we can't do this anymore. Oh, it's what's happening nowadays. It's enough with this racial discrimination. Done. It's like we don't need that any longer. We never needed it. And now we're sick and tired of this. There's no reason for discriminating people for the color of their skin, or for the nationality where they come from, or for their socioeconomic status, or for their beauty, or for their abilities, disabilities. We're past these discriminations. We need change. I think Daniel is asking a question, right, Daniel? Let me check on your question or thought. Let me see. Maybe an easy way to evaluate a good thought would be asking yourself, would Jesus think that? The answer is yes. It could indicate a positive thought. Yeah, you're right. That could be a very practical way of assessing it. I agree with you. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution, Daniel. So now, let us observe that these destructive mental waves, they occur because we are not aligned with the Creator's thought. And Andre Luis says a little more, and we want to just step forward one more slide. When he discloses to us examples of destructive mental currents, it's when we're talking or thinking or constantly talking about sick situations. Unnecessarily, right? Because doctors need to talk about people who are sick. People who are legislators, they need to talk about the difficulties so they implement transformations in the law. Educators need to talk about disruptive behaviors, but they are doing so to address them. But usually we don't think and talk about it with that purpose. And thus it becomes a destructive mental wave that connects to destructive mental currents. So if we're constantly checking the social media to see, oh my gosh, is there another protest? Is there you're not helping because you're not there, you're not changing the law, it's useless, it's fruitless. It's good to know once, but going constantly and see, did you see what's happening, creating that anxiety and feeling the emotional contagion, it just makes us be useless. We need to be active in the transformation. By thinking or constantly talking about it unnecessarily, we're changing the scenario. We need to take charge. For example, create a focus group about the situation that you want to address. Go to your local library or create an online group or page that informs people, that gives them new tools, that, builds bridges between people, amongst people. That will be constructive, but just talking about, did you see, it's destructive. And Andre Luis is going to say, debauchery. And I'll give you a synonym here, and forgive me because I'm stopping just to give you. It's when we are indulging in sensual pleasures. This is Andre Luis, not me. Excessive indulgence in sensual pleasures. It's in the book Mechanisms of Mediumship. And this was written in 1958. If you see the story of pornography, it escalated with the internet. And especially in this time of pandemic, it went even higher. It's about that need of sensual pleasures of all sorts. This is destructive. You think you're doing something that is good to you, but it's not. In Spiritism, it opens doors to vampirism, which is the highest form of obsession. Cruelty, like the one we saw regarding George Floyd. The 8 minutes and 46 seconds through which he was held down. And the many phrases people wrote about what he said during those minutes. That cruelty, that man wasn't alone. No, he was not alone. He had an IP address that was already connected to a whole network of spirits who indulge in cruelty. Going from one thought of discrimination to being an instrument of discrimination, like the officer in Minneapolis, it doesn't take a long time. It doesn't take a long time for somebody who has the IP address of discrimination to be connected to a whole network of discrimination and become an instrument of discrimination. Nowadays, with social media, we're seeing more and more clearly how any one of us in this world can be anonymous one day, the next day you become an instrument either of the good or evil. But that's a sign of our connections with the true networks of life, which are the mental networks. So an assessment question for you and I, which mental network are you investing on? Because at any given point during the day, we fluctuate from one mental current to another, constructive and destructive. We are often teased to stay there in those Wi-Fi's of negative, destructive mental currents. But which one are you deciding to stay most of the time during the day? Because André Luiz is saying here to us that the individual immediately incorporates the influence of incarnate or discarnate individuals who feed them. I'm going to stop here one more time so we discuss about these mental currents, right? We want to talk about how subtle it may be for us to recognize that we are connected to this destructive mental network, right? And how important it is to identify when we are connected to that, because we may be teased during the day. It's when you call a credit card company and you say, can you help me with this? And they don't have goodwill and you feel upset and you spend the whole day angry at that person that you don't even know. And that is a connection with the destructive mental current, right, Paloma?
Yeah, that's a great example because that creates that idea of a mono idea. You have a mental battle with someone, and then you have a conversation all day. I would have said that if they told me that, and I would have done this, and it's all in our heads, and that's what creates this very destructive mental currents. And the other point that you mentioned already, Vanessa, that I think Spiritism brings to light on, you can read on the Spirit's book, that we understand that we don't need to perform the action to actually already be doing it. So just having the thought of something negative, you're already halfway into the action. So putting together this with the mental currents, I don't know. You are a gun owner. You're halfway there. You're already with a gun, because you only have a gun if you have the intention or you're trying to shoot. And then you're already there. Then something happens. You're connecting with all these mental currents, and who knows if that would be sufficient to push you towards the edge, right? Because we know that these people that are doing what they're doing, they are being pushed to the edge.
Yes.
They're not alone, and they are vibrating and connecting and surrounded in their aura by it, but they are being, incarnates and discarnates. It's not only the other side, right? It ends up being all of us together in the big melting pot.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. Like a gun owner. I loved your example because it's so, people justify, but you have at hand something to kill. But I need to defend myself. But you want to kill somebody to defend yourself. I mean, you already prepared yourself. You're halfway through, and all you need to become an instrument of killing is just one more thought, one more feeling, and you're right there. Boom. So, I mean, recognizing the scenarios is so important to see when we enter the frequency of destructive mental currents.
Yeah.
you know, right?
Yes, and I was just gonna mention that these currents that we have, the thoughts that we have, is almost like we need really to know who we are, because as we are reincarnating on planet Earth, it's kind of more easier for us to be vibrating more connected with the destructed than the constructed sometimes, I feel, because you
Yeah.
see people around you always angry. If you say something, they are already like on top of you, screaming at you, why are you doing this and not that? So it's like we need to analyze how we are vibrating, because we want our aura very clean and connecting with the good, but it's an effort. Like we are been talking a lot about discipline this week's. It's a lot of effort for us to clean and make sure our connection and things, goals that we have in life is more elevated, because being here and being so influenced by our old self and all these disincarnated spirits, it is difficult for us to be thinking and doing the good constantly. So we need to really learn who we are, because we are progressing, but sometimes it will be easy for us to have this downfall, to do something not very happy, like I'm gonna eat a bowl of chocolate ice cream, because this is what I used to do all the time. Oh, or I'm gonna have my gun because this was what people used to have, like to protect their land. So all this stuff that we bring from other lives, like previous lives, and how we are growing up now, affects a lot how we think. So we need to like kind of clean a little bit to see if we can bring it back, these good connections that is inside of us. But sometimes, because a lot of pains, a lot of influence that we have surround us, and reincarnations, we ended up being more into the not so good connection.
Yes, and it's so true because many people say, "Oh, I don't know why I'm so sad, I'm depressed." Remember, from previous lives, we create thoughts and feelings that still radiate and we connect. And once we connect, we needed to understand what we do with it. Now we have a choice to say, "Okay, I'm feeling unsettled. I don't want to keep feeling this. I want to change." And then we go change it. But we need to be very, very effortful. Like we need to push our will towards the good, which is goodwill, to really change it.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about mental fixation. Paloma talked about mono idea or single idea. It's when we keep focused on one thing. There are people who spend their whole lives thinking about a certain topic. That shows to them that it's a theme for them. If it's a good thing, like, oh, I want to build a hospital. Okay, that's good. As long as you are in the environment for it. Some people think of, I want to buy a hospital, but there's nothing that points towards that direction. Okay, in this life, God wants you to do whatever. One day, maybe you're going to build a hospital, maybe in another life. Right now, we need skills and resources to do that. But what are the mental fixations that we have that are destructive? And this is bad because the good is not fixed. Let's stay here. I'm going to show you why. I'm going to show you why only the negative is this way. Compare. This is from the book Psychophonic Instructions. It's taken from Dr. Diaz da Cruz message on mental fixation. He says, let's compare. All good is expansion, growth, and harmony, and all evil is condensation, delay, and imbalance. Let's talk about this. Mental fixations are, oh, sorry, it changed. Mental fixations are only related to the negative because the good is not stuck. It's always expensive. It's always growing, always like the universe, expanding, expanding, expanding. But our fixations are limiting. They imprison us. He even talks about in the message. He says, evil is imprisoning, whereas love is liberating. He says, and I will quote here in his text, he says, good is the permanent wave of life radiate like the sun, but evil can be considered like this cyst of darkness. So that's why when we are stuck with an idea that doesn't let us sleep, it's a sign that we need to make a choice to get out of that frequency. How? How? The good spirits say, observing the agents of mental induction. Observing our conversations, André Luiz says. Observing what we read, and nowadays not only books, but social media. Contemplating a picture, you see? Contemplating a picture is going to define our connections. The idea that we focus to a certain object, even a show that we watch, a visit that is paid to us or that we made. We pay a visit or somebody pays a visit to us, and advice and opinion, that becomes an agent of mental induction. And when that happens, it's defining what is this making us connect to. For example, nowadays many people are talking about the coronavirus, the political things, etc. There are things we need to say. Great, Governor of Virginia, you're going to take down all of these monuments that represent people that were not very all-embracing. Great. But we're not cursing anybody. There is a difference. One thing is to stimulate and encourage people to do the good. Great, do the good. We support you. Or cursing, beating, etc. is not going to do any good. So when we watch the news, be careful, because that can be a trigger for us to create an IP address that will make us connect to a mental current, and we may be stuck there sometimes for days, weeks, years, and when we realize it, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Video games. People think video games are harmless. In our mediumistic meetings, we've seen video games are hypnotizing. I sometimes play video games on my phone with Virginia. Cooking Fever, Cooking Craze, which is apparently harmless, right? Tom Hero. Because of her, I go there and I play so she's not alone. But how long we're going to do this? Hours? Hours? If I start playing for hours, it's a sign I'm hypnotized. And vampire spirits start sucking on my energy, and I become very unproductive. Oh, Vanessa, but I do this and I work and I pay my bills. Yeah, but who said in your reincarnatory plan it's written that you're supposed to pay your bills? I've never read in any spiritist book that the goal of our lives to be fulfilled is to pay our bills. It's about moral milestones. If you're living a selfish life, it's a destructive mental current, because it's just about your pleasures. There are people who are sick, and then instead of illuminating ourselves, like we tell children, why are you watching this program? Oh, because it's funny. But is it making you any smarter? Oh, but it's so cute. Okay, but is it making you grow? Are you learning anything? No. So it seems harmless, but it's not doing any good either. So it's harmless. It's harmful. Apparently harmless, but deeply harmful because it's a waste of time, a waste of vitality. Mental fixations are so dangerous. They push us to the abyss of obsessions, and once there, it's very hard. I would recommend on Saturdays at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, people who can watch either live or on demand. Carol Correa and Sunshine are studying the book Liberation by André Luiz Trujillo Xavier, and that book is all about that, how people enter these mental fixations, connect to these destructive mental currents, and then hundreds of obsessors start ganging up on us. And to get out of this, it's a whole lot of work for many dozens of entities of the good that need to rescue one person, but they end up rescuing hundreds just to reach that person. It's a lot of work. I think we're tired of being troublemakers in this universe because we've been for many lives. We've been giving headaches to our spirit guides, mentors to Jesus because we don't want to walk the line. And not walking the line doesn't mean fulfilling the human laws. We're talking about the divine laws. It's about being less selfish and egotistic because once we are there in selfishness and pride, we're in trouble. So I wanna wrap up before the passes by discussing these ideas and the importance of the remedy, right? If we ask about the remedy, it's here. The perseverance in the good, in goodness, choosing the good. You're watching a program, think, what does it give me? What does it make me grow? You're connecting to a network. So, Luciana and Paloma, let's talk a little more about this technique that we can use to get us out of these mental fixations and into these constructive mental currents.
I think Spiritism brings to us that we are responsible for our thought. I think this is the first recognition for us to be able to make a change. We cannot any longer say, oh, this is happening to me, or even I'm having mental fixation because of, I'm connecting to thoughts, but we are making a choice to connect. So that's great because that means we can make a change. It's on us. Is it going to happen? Yes. Probably multiple times a day. As Vanessa was saying, we're oscillating between these frequencies, but the fastest we snap out of it, the better. And I think that brings what Lou was saying, that it's all about knowing ourselves. So you need to be able to recognize these emotions that are taking us to places that might want to stay there, but you shouldn't. So, okay, I recognize that I am sad or I'm fearful, and then saying, okay, and change to the positive side of, but I believe in God. I don't have to be afraid. Or, I had a bad conversation, but you know what? That person doesn't know any better. I'm already, I'm going to forgive it. Forget about that conversation. And now I feel better. So to me, it's recognize those emotions and thoughts that we're feeling all the time, and then replace it with a good emotion. Yeah.
Yes, that's good one. Replacing with a good emotion. Thank you, Paloma. Lou.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, like, there is only to network, there's only two things: or you're doing something good or you're doing something bad. So we always need to think, okay, I'm watching, I'm reading, but like you were mentioning, what am I gonna put this in my life? Is that going to be something good or not? So we always need to ask the question, like Daniel said. I always say, what would be Jesus doing at this time? You know, is he going to approve of what I'm doing? Am I doing something good for me that will be good for others afterwards? Because it's like we are investing, because time is not ours, time is God's. So how are we investing and using this precious time that he's giving to us to do something good, to do something that is not good? So it's very important to like know who we are, know our goals, and like we're learning, we're trying to get better. We still have a long pathway to go to be perfect spirits, just like Jesus. But like at least now we have all these books, and Liberation is a great book for a liberation for ourselves, for our souls. And like we need to know, we need to read, we need to get to more information so we can make this decision. Because sometimes we don't know if we're doing good or bad. So as the much that we invest in our knowledge, we'll make a better decision to be doing good and not good stuff. So we need to focus on that to see, what am I doing? It's good. If it's not good, I need to switch. And like this morning, listen to Louise Hay meditation. She really helps you to change the cycle, everything. There's many visualizations. Divaldo Franco has some guidance visualization and things that will help us to change the vibrations. And music that we listen, we can have music at home and try to help and make our whole place, our whole home, a safe heaven. So we know, like, oh, if I come here, the music is playing like this, I'm gonna vibrate and do good things. And so that way I know when I'm getting out of this good vibration, that like, oh, I recognize that I'm going out and let me come back. So we need to know how to come back and change the bad vibrations and bad connections.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I just needed to share that the discernment that we have is our greatest tool, goodwill and discernment. So we need to put mind over matter. For the longest time, for many lives, we have done things instinctively. Now it's time to reason our feelings, our thoughts, to really understand what we want to do with it. As André Luiz says, we are in the Creator's thought. We need to co-create in harmony. As Dr. Diaz da Cruz says, the good, the good. I think his words are so powerful when he says to us here, let me put back that one slide, when he says, all good is expansion, growth, and harmony, and all evil is condensation, delay, and imbalance. Good feels so good that it's impossible not to feel it. It's when you say, oh, I don't want to clean the house today, but it's so important for the whole family. Let us do it. And then we start doing, say, I'm going to put mind over matter. Body, we need to do it. Because the gravity pulls us down and we don't feel like it. But then we say, body, like a puppet, let's stand up, take the vacuum, and start vacuuming. Let's do the laundry and love it. And think of the day we're going to be like Jeannie. Think. And the whole house is clean. I'm dreaming of that day.
Me too.
Who is not?
That'd be awesome.
But the more we practice with our hands, one day it's going to become so powerful that we're going to think and the whole house is clean. One day, one day. Even if,
And the feeling of the house cleaning, it changed the vibration of everything. Then you feel, oh, I'm so happy, release.
right?
Yeah, I
We're
did.
talking about little things that we
Thing.
can do. And John DeRose is saying here, when we think we're doing fine, it's not too long until we fall behind. What we possibly forgotten to do, could it be a prayer too? Oh my gosh, I love the verses. So beautiful, they rhyme. Yes, a prayer or two. Thank you, John. Beautiful. So, friends, now in this tone of joy, because this is good news for us, right? We're not stuck. We can free ourselves. We're going to ask our dear Luciana to conduct the spiritual passes and then followed by the prayer by Paloma. But don't forget your bottled water. Keep it there, quiet. Tell the family just 5 more minutes of quietness so we can all together join our forces and move forward. Okay? Okay. One before Saul Souza has a question. Okay, one more question before we go. Before the passes. What to do if someone in our family likes to be connected with something not good? Like watch bad movies, like horror movies, or keep how to keep a good vibration. You, beautiful question. What to do, right? What to do? We would say pray, because your guardian angel, the guardian angel of the person, and I say guardian angel meaning the protecting spirits, they also want us to raise our vibrations. Let's first pray and say, please help me, so we can get ourselves on the same page. Once we attune with them, we have a team to take action. And what is the action? One day we're going to find a way to talk to those family members, say, I've heard that when we do this, bad spirits come. Did you know? I'm just sharing. I don't know. I would rather not do it. But we're not preaching. We're just saying. And we tell it our children or one another, saying, we're not going to enforce saying, from now on, no horror movies in our home or else. And then it becomes a battlefield.
Yeah.
And then it's worse, right?
Yeah, I think is a good step is just saying like I don't like this type of movie. Like you said, you tell the reason why, and you already withdraw yourself to watching. So okay, if you want to watch it, you watch yourself. I'm not gonna be part of it. And then they start saying, oh, now I'm alone watching this, and then things start changing eventually.
And if they ask, you can say why, right? You can
Yes,
say,
yeah,
because,
yeah,
it doesn't bring any good vibrations, right?
yes.
All right. Thank you for the question. So now let us prepare ourselves, okay? Let us prepare ourselves for this very, very moment.
So let us close our eyes, dear friends. If you can sit straight up, so your chakras being aligned. Let us feel these loving vibrations coming from above. As the rain that fall from the skies, cleansing our planet, we feel the raindrops falling on us, also cleansing our aura, cleansing our body, dissolving and washing away all the not elevated connections that we have, making a space for us to make a greater connection with the mentors, with the doctors and nurses that are surround you now. We now feel the spiritual treatment permeating our perispirit, making our body feeling lighter. We feel this joyful cleansing in our souls. And as as we receive this treatment, making ourselves lighter, we can start flying away in direction to this lavender light, this healing light. We feel that we can go so close, and the closest as we get, we feel lighter and lighter. This light is a healing light, healing every little cell that we have, healing our perispirit. And as everything around us is purple, we feel immersed in this loving, healing sensation. We know that Master Jesus, Mother Mary are working on us in this healing treatment. And now as we come back to where we're sitting, we feel that all our chakras are aligned and rotating in the right direction, helping us to absorb better this treatment. And this treatment that we are receiving is expanding to our network of brothers and sisters in both planes of life. Is enveloping our whole planet. And we all vibrate and feel the same healing light feeling that we had when we were close to the purple light. And as we continue to absorbing these healing vibrations, we'll move to the prayer to finalize these therapeutic moments.
Dear loving Mother, Father God, we are so thankful for the teachings today that boosted our discernment. The explanations about the higher vibrations and the lower vibrations brings to us the opportunity to choose in our lives to connect with you. And in this moment that we pray, we feel closer as we now understand that constructive currents are the ones that connect us to you. Dear God, we feel blessed to know so much, and we want to pray for the ones that are still unaware of the changes they need to make. We pray for the lower zones, for the ones that don't have access to books, to sharing and discussing together, as we understand that these moments gives us the opportunity to develop our conscious even further. We are also very thankful for the loving teachers, spirit mentors, and doctors and nurses that were with us tonight. And with your permission and your protection, we would like to close the session tonight, and so be it.
Thank you, Paloma and Luciana. Thank you, friends. And a reminder for everybody, as Paloma mentioned already, tomorrow, yay! Yay! Tomorrow there's the food drive from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. in front of the Spiritus Society of Virginia Center. It's at the parking lot, right in front of it. The donations, you can go to our website, ssvirginia.org, to get to know more about it. And let us just know that because of course, the needed social distancing, we're not going to get into the center. We are, you can just go through your car with your car if you want. But if you get out of your car, it's important to have the mask and the gloves to put the donation. We're going to keep ourselves far from each other just to respect the call of the governor of Virginia, and also the needed distancing for the recovery of all of us, okay? To avoid anything. If you have any question, please write to us. We thank everybody. Thank you, Paloma. Thank you, Luciana.
Thank you, friends.
And a big hug to all of you in beautiful thoughts and beautiful feelings. After all, we're all progressing. A big hug, and until next time.
Bye, friends.